Good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Northland Sports Page. It's Brian Prudhomme. It's Dave Cook. It is Saturday, the first Saturday in April. Hope you survived April Fools. Or as Mr. T might say, welcome to April Fool. How we doing,
nice.
Dave Cook? Good morning.
Very nice. You forget that it's April Fools when you see some of those crazy things online and you're like, the hoops line about we are no longer a
your
Vikings
Packer
bar.
go-to bar.
Yep.
That might come up when we talk to Dave in about a half hour.
It took me a second to go, huh? Oh, yeah, it's the first.
I was going to say, well, is he pulling his sponsorship then, or are we pulling it for him if he's going to become the go-to Packer bar? But
right. We
would be lost without Dave Hoops and many of our great sponsors, of course.
Absolutely. Let's start with Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater downtown, Tavern on the Hill, Proctor, and Two Harbors.
Absolutely. I got to give a shout out to the Blackwoods folks for the week in general because, of course, it was Snowmageddon the week before. Yeah. So I had a lot of rescheduled team banquets from winter sports. And we were at the ballroom Wednesday for the East Boys. The food was magnificent. And that's just that's the way Blackwoods does things.
Right. They're victims of their own expectations.
Yes.
They're building expectations in these kids, right? And when they go to Blackwoods as they get older, they're going to remember this
right.
stuff. So,
and then one more shout out for them because last night I got home from the Twins home opener. We did an overnight trip. And Friday night, just got home from a long travel day. You just don't want to think about dinner. With Tavern, I don't have to think. I know I like the whole menu. That might be the deepest thought I have is, oh, shoot, I like 30 items. Which one do I get? But, you can't go wrong. They did me well again Friday night.
Well, and the thing is sometimes when you order food and just some random person brings it over, you never know how much it's going to cost, right?
Right.
You have an idea, but it changes.
And then Tavern delivery, cost effective, and you know what you're getting.
That's absolutely right. Let's Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, OAR Holdings, Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer, Arola Architecture Studio,
OG.
And of course Hoops Brewing.
Hoops Brewing. And again, yes, they started perhaps your recognition of April Fools with their big to-do of advertising. It's your Packer go-to. Now, tell me you live in a border town when some people said, this will be great. Yeah. And other people said, this better be the worst joke ever.
It was just, 100%. It was funny because I don't usually react, right?
Right.
Like, oh, yeah.
They got you then.
It did. Yep.
Truthfully, I think you reach a certain age where the only time that you realize it's April Fool's now is if you go on social media because you're familiar with the phrase tryhards.
Yes.
People try way too hard to get you on certain things. In fact, a buddy of mine, I think, was gotten by somebody else and then tried to pass it on to me. He sends me a text message that all it said was, Justin Jefferson released. And I know he's a huge Bears fan. And I sent something back about, and William Perry and Mike Singletary cheated and the 85 Bears no longer have Super Bowl rings. And he's like, oh, it's April 1st.
That's funny. That's funny. But you're right. You look at that and you're like, okay, and because we're old enough now to be a little cynical.
You'd hope. A little cynical? We're Minnesota sports fans. I think we've exceeded expectations there.
I looked at the hoops thing, and my first thought was, is this a business decision? Like, is there not a Packer bar? Do there need to be a Packer bar? And then it was, ugh.
Well, I actually thought, how good is business going? Are they opening up a Superior location? I guess I'd go there. The beer's good. I'll go wherever they need me.
Exactly right.
So let me ask you this about April Fools, and it might jar your memory a little bit, or it might have to. So what's the best April Fool's joke you've played? And do you remember taking one hook, line, and sinker?
Oh, this hoops one's pretty good,
right?
By the way,
You got a new low point or high point, depending upon perspective.
No, it's not because it sneaks up on me, Brian. You know how aware I am of what day it is.
It's April 6th, by the way.
Right.
People are probably wondering, why are these guys talking about April Fool's Day on the 6th? Well, I'll tell you what, that's the ins and outs of having a weekly show. It's the first time we've been on the air in April.
Exactly. No, I'm absolutely clueless. I get caught by them, not long-term sending out additional texts about it, but I'll get, I'm not the one who sends them out.
All right, so I was a bad husband this year because I played one, and I played one on my wife, but I only played it for a few seconds, and I saw her digging for her phone to confirm what I was saying, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to put you through this. So she goes to leave the house, and she leaves pretty darn early in the morning, and I work from home, so I got a 5-second commute 90 minutes later, and she's saying goodbye, and she's running through this litany of stuff that she's got to get done today. And, this is just going to be so chaotic. And I said, well, it's a good thing you only have a half day then. And she said, what? I said, I was looking at the news this morning and ISD 709 is doing some sort of, district-wide review. They're closing up at 1:00. And I just started to smirk, but she didn't see me. And she starts digging through her phone like, how would you know that before me? I should have gotten an email or a text or something. And I went, no, April Fools, you have the whole day. And I suck. From that point on was kind of her response. But as a kid, my favorite thing to do was have slumber parties in the living room with family, with friends, with whomever. And my sister knew that I loved this. Well, I don't remember the year, but April Fools was a weekday, and we didn't do that on school nights. And she came in and had her sleeping bag in hand, and she's like, come on, Mom said we're going to watch movies and have popcorn and drink Coke and, have a night, even though it's Thursday. She said we were, good job at school this week, so we're going to do that. Really awesome. I got all prepared to get out in the living room, took 3 steps, April Fools. I think I was like 8 or 9.
You still remember
I was
it.
sad, yeah.
Yeah, you still remember it.
I was so sad.
Absolutely. But it is kind of funny because, I was thinking while you were bringing it up, all the things in sports that has done that to me over the years, whether it's on April Fools or not, you get this thing and you're like so excited or so disappointed, and then you get the April Fools.
Right. So speaking of April Fools, you and I decided it's our first show of April. It's not April 1st, but in our world, it might as well be.
And it's us two, so that's fools.
Right, and we often
the fools part.
Either are fools or fool each other, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But we decided that the opening topic today would be a takeoff of April Fools, and we decided to think about what were the times, and there's a plethora of these, which is why we're going to spend the next 25 or so minutes on it. What were the times that Minnesota pro sports teams looked foolish? And as a grandiose statement, you could take that a bazillion directions. I don't want to do a ton of it in hindsight, because when you and I were talking about this, I said, well, here we go. We're going to bring up not drafting Steph Curry. We're going to bring up David Ortiz leaving. We're going to bring up all these teams that just, beat us to death. Vikings, Twins, Wild Wolves, doesn't matter. But I think it's different if you think about, were they foolish in the moment? Because you love to talk about the Herschel Walker trade, and everybody does. But you and I both said, we didn't think it was foolish the minute it happened. You said you were guilty of partying and your dad going, settle down. And once again, father knows best, but we didn't know that in the moment. Makes a difference.
No, and really the first one that came to mind, we were talking about this, is, do you remember the great Miguel Sano right field debate?
I do.
We're going to get his bat out there. It's easy enough to learn right field. He's going to be fantastic in the 4-hole. And everybody was like, let's go.
We got the right fielder of the future. And then we saw a fly ball go out there.
2 fly balls off the forehead later. And we said, gosh, he'd be a good DH.
Right. That's a very, very good one. I thought in relationship to the Steph Curry draft, I did think that the back-to-back point guards made me go, what? I didn't mind that Steph Curry wasn't the choice, because I'm sorry, I know that there are people that know the game a lot better than me, but how many Cinderella teams make a run in the NCAA tournament, and you don't necessarily assume that their star is going to be an NBA star?
And he's 6'2", and he's tiny. And
I was going to say, didn't we have George Mason and like Florida Atlantic in Final Fours? We weren't pining for their star players, but that's the thing. So we ended up with Johnny Flynn. Now, I had watched the multi-overtime game that made Johnny Flynn a household name. I get it, but Rubio and Flynn, same position, back-to-back first rounds. I didn't understand that.
Also,
I'll fully admit that.
Also weird, because back then, all right, so Davidson was a college nobody even knew about. So not only was it Cinderella, it was Cinderella of a drag of a guard who was ball dominant and 6'2". Like, they still wouldn't draft that guy. Right. But the thing is Johnny Flynn or Rubio. At that time, Rubio was this mysterious European who could do anything, and yet they took Johnny Flynn first.
Right.
Which was just weird. I was like, Rubio's going, Brian, and it was like, oh, who? Johnny Flynn.
Well, the other piece to me was, how foolish can you be if somebody literally tells you something and you disregard it? Because my thought was, wait a minute, you took Rubio, but then you took another point guard. You have to know he's not coming here right away.
Yeah.
And so that had to be their reason why. But if you know that one of them is going to make you wait 2 years, why are you taking him?
Well, don't forget, there was still a third pick in that draft.
Right.
Another point guard. Yes, it was. We picked 3 point guards in a draft one time.
Right.
So, yeah, no, that one. The other one that came to mind, and again, it was in the moment. It's easy to look back on now, but in the moment, it was Joe Webb's first drive against Green Bay in the playoff game, because Joe Webb allowed. So we think Josh.
The second they decided to let him throw?
Well, no, the second they said, okay, that offense was cool, but we're going to play our offense now, Joe. You got to play in structure, and it was a disaster. But when they just said, Joe, get the ball, run around, make something happen. It's like what we saw with Josh Dobbs, right? He could make things happen when there was no structure, but you put him in structure and it was a mess, except this was a Green Bay playoff game.
Right.
And he really did make them look foolish in the first drive and then made the rest of us look foolish when we were. Because that's the point where you put your thumbs in your lapels and you go, yeah, we got this one. And yeah, no.
And then you watch the first one-hop pass that went for 2.5 yards, and you went, oh, they got this.
That's why Webb doesn't start.
Viking playoff foolishness for me, there's a plethora of options, and I get it. For me, it was the taking of the knee against Atlanta. Now, I know Gary missed. I know Robert Griffith had an interception go right through the wickets. I know we tried to get greedy before the end of the first half. Turnover got Atlanta back in the game. I know all of those things. But in the moment, which is the key to this category to me, you're in a tie game. You had multiple timeouts. You had an offense that was known for nothing but being able to score quickly. And you go ultimate, well, we're Minnesota, something bad might happen. No.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. The kneel was probably the appropriate thing to do at that time, except for that team that year. Because that team that year would have had lightning in the bottle someplace. You know what I mean? I think the one that worked out for us, but at the moment we were still really kind of surprised it happened, was who leaves your starting pitcher in for the 10th inning of a World Series game?
Right.
Like, you had a closer.
That's an interesting spin. What felt foolish and didn't end that way? It doesn't quite have the same negative connotation, but the thought process is very similar.
I remember him walking back off the field, Tom Kelly walking off the field and saying, what in the hell is he doing? Like, you can't leave him in. He's old. Morris has been okay. He wasn't the Cy Young Award winner, right? He had been tough in Detroit the last couple of years, a 500 pitcher, and you're leaving him in the 10th?
Well, you know who hates that game besides Braves fans? Grady Little.
Yeah.
Because he went, hey, this worked. Didn't work for you.
Yeah, right. No, it's that was one of those where it was just in the moment, just like, oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
And then it played out.
I don't like to bring up a lot of things on consecutive weeks if we don't have to, but I think the trading of Tom Bernansky for Tommy Hurst still fits in this category.
Yeah.
When that happened, I went, I don't understand the logic here at all.
I remember saying to a buddy, what did Bernansky do? Like, what? I mean, I know that he wasn't Puckett, obviously, but what did he do to make everybody so mad you're going to trade him for a second baseman who doesn't? I mean, Hurd drove in a lot of runs for St. Louis because everybody in front of him got on base, and he was a 300 hitter, but he hit like 6 home runs. Like, what's the purpose here? And proof was nothing.
So one team we haven't picked on yet, and we've admitted we don't follow them closely enough, the Minnesota Wild is more difficult for me, but again, I think we get kind of hoodwinked by, well, we're the state of hockey. We love them no matter what. They've never really been bad. There are people out there that are screaming about the Brent Burns trade, and we've done that on repeat.
But in the moment, we all said, this is dumb.
Well, I thought it was dumb, but I also thought pretending that he was God's gift was dumb as well because we couldn't find a position for the guy.
Yep.
And now I get it. He went elsewhere and he exploded, but that's not really where I want to go with this topic because then we just sit and talk about David Ortiz all day long.
So my take on this for the Wild was the Binnington, I think it was Binnington. It doesn't matter. It was a 50-save game. Then when the Wild felt like they were rolling and they put 50 up shots on goal and the goalie stood on his head. And it was like, yeah, but wait till tomorrow. We are going to light this team up because we played really well. The goalie was just hot.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Well, and I think some of it, we like to do historical takes on Minnesota sports to open every show. You can go very current with some of this. Now, with the Wild, I saw this on social media, and it's just a reminder that social media is a cesspool. Everybody who has a keyboard gets to have an opinion, and it gets tough. But you could say, we all understood what John Hines was doing because either you're going to the playoffs or you're not, and leave no wondering. But I guarantee you, I had 2 family members that were at the game last weekend where he pulled the goalie again in overtime. First time he did it and they won, it was huge. But we knew the new risk now. Wait a minute, if they lost on an empty netter, they don't get any points? Well, that's what happened. And some people went, well, what the hell are you doing? If you follow the game, you knew exactly what he was doing. I have no problem with it, but I know he's being labeled as foolish by some.
Yeah, and that's tough because, Brian, I don't know how many times you've had this conversation with other people, but I said, doggone it, look at what's this. It doesn't matter if you lose at this point, and when it's regular overtime or getting to overtime, or you're down by 1 and they pull the goalie early,
right?
And people go, "What are you doing?" It's because it doesn't matter if you lose by 2.
Patrick Waugh wrote the book on you're a little bit foolish when there's 4.5 minutes left and you're yanking the goalie. I want to give a little bit of breaking foolish news perhaps, because my newest fools will be people that play fantasy baseball and took Shane Bieber high. It just broke that Shane Bieber of Cleveland needs Tommy John. Oof. Right. I'm not going to call injury good news, but the rest of the American League Central probably just went, oh, that's too bad.
I think that there's, a lot of baseball that can get to that fool me once. I wrote down Martin Perez. Do you remember Martin Perez came to Minnesota as the biggest afterthought ever because he was a 5 ERA guy?
Which is saying something because we made a litany of afterthought pitchers a big deal in the rotation.
And the pitching coach that went to LSU.
Oh, gosh. I know exactly what you're talking about, but now I can't.
He taught him,
is it Wes Johnson? No.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, he taught him the slider, the hard biting slider. And he went ridiculous for the first half of the first year. Got to the All-Star game, I believe, and then turned into Martin Perez.
It is Wes Johnson. My favorite memory of Wes Johnson is he reminded me of me, and people are going to go, what? Well, every time he went out to the mound, he looked about 1.5 feet shorter than everybody he was talking to. And I have so many friends that are athletes, and I'm considerably shorter than all of them. So I had a special spot for Wes Johnson in my heart until he bailed. Then forget it.
Yeah, so Martin Perez was one of those that, again, I am just cynical enough to go, just wait, he'll turn into Martin Perez. But there were so many people who were just in, right? We got a guy. We finally, what the Twins have been trying to do since I was a kid? We're going to get somebody else's 4-starter, and we're going to
turn him into our 2 or 1.
And and so it felt like so many people were like, we got him. We did it finally.
And we didn't.
No, the pumpkin came due.
We keep doing the negativity of Minnesota sports. I don't think with this you always have to because
Morris is an example.
And I also think same series, same game. April Fool's on Lonnie Smith. That World Series ends differently if Lonnie Smith runs the bases without peeking at Greg Gagne and Chuck Knobloch. That's the ultimate. Can we call that October Fools? Because it didn't happen in April.
Yeah, and Nobby's the one that pulled off the April Fool's joke.
Right.
So, yeah, that doesn't seem to happen all that often. But, excuse me, there are a few other April Fool's moments on our teams that were positive. I mean, the Derrick Rose 50, right? On a positive and a negative because Derrick Rose came out of nowhere for that 50.
But he fooled you into thinking you got the Derrick Rose that everybody waited for.
Correct.
You look like you were going to burp again. I just kept talking.
I appreciate that.
Too much Coke pre-show for
fast,
you. Yes,
too fast.
That's Coca-Cola for anybody wondering.
Well, but if I start talking like this, you may wonder.
Right.
No, the Wolves have had a number of April Fool's moments. The center that was okay for us but was terrible for everybody else. The Serbian
Darko.
Kid. Yep, Darko got us for a while, and then he turned back into Darko. And so the April Fools, on a positive way, though, think about Kevin Love's huge game with a three-pointer from center court. Kevin Love had us believing that this is a top 5 NBA player.
Yeah.
And I believe the next year was knuckle push-up year,
right.
And we all went, okay, so we got bilateral leg weakness guy, and now we got knuckle push-up guy. What have we done to deserve this?
Yeah, it does morph into a different spin on the fooling in April Fools. It becomes, instead of looking foolish in a moment, at what point did different facets of Minnesota sports provide you almost with April Fool's gold? When were you fooled into thinking you had something more than you did? A lot of us that are, long season Minnesota sports fans can say, well, that happens all the time. I even went again very current. When we were first talking about doing this topic, I said, well, can I bring up the not 1 but 2 tush pushes for the Vikes against the Bengals with Brandon Powell, a.k.a. Brian Prudhomme, doing the tush pushing?
Yeah, no, that one was, the first one might have been April Fool's. The second one was, so who's O'Connell's other head? I mean, did Brian Flores be the head coach?
The only thing I could think of with the first one was if you're running Brandon Powell behind your quarterback, everybody's going, well, they're not doing a tush push because it won't get anywhere. So if nobody reacts to it, maybe it does get somewhere.
Yeah.
The second one, who hit copy and paste on accident?
That's what I meant. That second one, you said, can Brian Flores start calling plays? Because this isn't working.
So the foolish in the moment part is so hard because we could talk about, draft picks that we're going, we could have had that guy instead. Why did we have that guy? But again, that's been my pet peeve about draft analysis. Everybody says, well, this is great, this is fabulous, and I haven't played yet. So in the moment, I just don't think you're sure, but there's still some metal to that topic.
Yeah, there is, and Demetrius Underwood is one, and the reason that's fool me is because he was non-draftable on many boards. They called the head coach of Michigan State, and he told them not to draft him because he had all these mental problems.
Did he know Rashad McCants too? Isn't that the guy the Wolves were told to steer clear from? And we went, I'll show you. Oh, wait, you were right all along.
That guy.
Yeah.
So there's been some draft fool use, but one of the good ones is the Minneapolis Miracle. Like, I know there was no time left, so your options were thin, right?
Well, and who looks foolish in that moment is Marshawn Lattimore. Nobody with the Vikings.
Well, but let's take it a step further. The fool me games over pretty much our lives have been against the New Orleans Saints in playoffs.
Right.
And both positive and negative.
We thought we had the emergence of Kirk Cousins when he beat New Orleans in New Orleans in a playoff game. The Kirk thing is an interesting topic to me because I personally could sit there and say, I rode this roller coaster for all it was worth. When we were going to sign, I know I'm not on the team, when the Minnesota Vikings were going to sign Kirk Cousins, I think our show was in week 2 or so of existence.
Yep.
Something to that effect. And when we
was it during the races?
Something like that.
I think it might have been during the races.
And when we first brought it up as possible, my response was one word, and that one word was ish. And I think your response was one word, and it was why.
Yep. Well, because I said, because our quarterback at that time was, what's his name?
Was Case Keenum.
Yes. And I said, well, we got to have somebody better than him. And so Kirk's better than him.
Right. Kind of a low bar, but now you look at what they're doing currently, and they're going to try to win with defense and work a quarterback in. With Case Keenum, that's what you were doing. Now, I'm not going to go back and say what a foolish move, but I thought they looked foolish in the moment. Then I watched Kirk play, and I disagreed, and I laugh at people to go, well, look at their record with Case Keenum. Case was obviously a better quarterback. No. The supporting cast in other spots was different. You had a defense with Case Keenum. So I get what you're saying, but you're kind of saying it wrong. Yeah. But I'm just wondering if people are going, well, the Vikings look foolish with Kirk in the moment, and I'd probably agree with you. But as the moment went on, I don't.
No, but I think that's true in almost all of these examples, is that, I mean, Martin Perez only pitched like twice after the All-Star game as a starter.
Right.
Because he just completely nuked. And so that part, it was, the fool me was the beginning. The normalization came afterwards. One of the examples, though, that I was thinking while you were talking is Daniel Carlson, right? Because we kind of got fooled by him twice.
Because we looked foolish watching him try to kick at Lambeau, and then we looked foolish when he got his career on track.
We looked foolish when we drafted him because you drafted a kicker. And then we looked foolish after the kicker that we drafted turned into a pumpkin against Green Bay. Then we looked foolish when our coach just said, get him out of here.
So I think 2 or 3 times, twice on the air and maybe once before we got on the air, can you say the word pumpkin?
What?
Well, because you've said pumpkin every single time. Pumpkin is the process that Ashton Kutcher does. A pumpkin is the orange creation that you usually see on Halloween.
So no is the answer.
Right,
I can't say that.
Okay, pumpkin, we'll just keep the show going. So speaking of which, I brought up the NFL draft earlier because of timeliness, because in a few weeks we're going to be knee-deep in it, and we even get an extra special show that we'll announce as the date gets closer. But if we really think of when did your favorite Minnesota team look foolish, how is the NFL draft not the number one with a bullet with, we can't get our card in to make a pick?
Yeah, no, because foolish doesn't necessarily...
there's a lot of words I can't say that might describe it better.
But it might be the perfect example of what we're talking about, because at the moment we look terrible.
And the draft pick turned out beautifully.
Yeah, Ring of Honor guy.
Right.
And so,
Can we try that this year? If you're not sure which quarterback you really want, just don't turn your card in for a while and then go, he's still available.
You know how I feel about this draft. I think you should stay and pick at 11 and all that, because I don't know if I trust the GM to make the right trade. Like, if Spielman was there, we'd say, well, he's going to trade 11 back and he's going to get, 5 other picks, and we're going to draft a bunch of special team guys. So are you saying that we're going to do this topic again the first week in May, which will be the Saturday after the draft? We're going to say they looked foolish when Kwesi did this. We might do that on our
Can you do it already for trading back to get Lewis Seen?
Yes.
I know it's not really fair, but it sure looks true. And you could say it about every choice made in 2022.
You can say it about every draft pick of Kwesi's except for Addison.
Right. That's why I said every pick of 22. And I'll give him a little bit of leeway on not only Addison, but, Mekhi Blackman is too short, but he wasn't terrible.
He wasn't terrible.
Right.
That's true. And I guess you have to give his wherewithal to pick up pace as an undrafted.
If this doesn't pan out this year.
He's gone.
Right. Are the Vikings going to look foolish for taking Mr. Wall Street, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, in that position anyway?
They certainly will. but it'll be because they took a risk, right? And we knew they were taking a risk. We thought that his unique way of thinking would be a plus, right? But man, but here's the thing: if he blows this draft, that'll be 3 drafts in a row within reason. A couple of players. How far back are the Vikings going to be set back? You can't lose 3 entire drafts.
Well, and are they linked? I like KOC a lot.
Yep.
But if one goes, how far behind is the other? Because you always think about new regime wants own guy.
You listen to Kwesi? I like Kwesi a lot.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy, and he gets but he just can't. I hope that he learned all his foolishness, got that out of the way, and is not going to be played for a fool this year.
I feel like there are a lot more times probably in a game where our favorite team looked foolish. But they're
2 minutes left in a quarter for the last 10 years.
Yeah, they're just not coming to mind very well. I mean, I can say I just got back from the Twins home opener. Every single time they had a runner in scoring position, every batter looked absolutely foolish. I mean, put the ball in play. You're looking at a much different game, much different team in general if they learn to do that much better. But it's also very Minnesotan to be just locked on the panic button and you've got a 3-3 baseball team.
Well, how about signing Kirk the second time for the 100% guaranteed contract?
Right.
I mean, he had some really good years, right? But that 100% guaranteed contract really stopped them from doing some things that would have made the team better.
I just want to break in with a couple more texts. We've got some listeners interacting, and that's what makes the show really fun. I'm going to read you 2, and I'm going to save the listeners' names. I'm going to keep their anonymity. All the texts say are pumpkin. Ha 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 ha. So people are listening.
So I'm just going to start calling it a gourd. Is that okay?
Right. You're going to go heavy with jack-o'-lanterns during the Halloween season.
Exactly correct. No, it's the idea of sports teams looking foolish is almost a rite of fan passage.
Well, you've used luring as an adjective or verb, making fun of Mark Lowry, which I suppose would technically be lorrying, but we were taking off on what we heard other media personalities say.
Hey, in Europe, wouldn't that be trucking?
Right. Or we could do A-rodding. Are we looking foolish because we can't figure out, feels like Slapshot. Who owns the Wolves? Owns. We can't seem to figure out how to even run the team.
Yeah, that's a whole, that Timberwolves front office can be fool me. I mean, starting from Harvin Marv all the way through, you pick the Rambises, you pick the Cons, you pick the Joe Smith contracts. I mean, the ownership style of the Wolves is fool me.
Well, we might have just opened up Pandora's box. Might be a fun way to end it. Rank them best to worst in terms of, I guess, who's the least foolish with your front offices. Because you've got Conley and whomever owns the Wolves. You've got the Polad family, whatever's left of it, in charge of the Twins, kind of leaving you stumped. The Wilfs are great owners, but we don't trust the GM, and the coach is linked to him. Bill Guerin, it's, in Guerin we trust, and Leopold will spend whatever he needs to, but they've been in contract purgatory for a while. I guess in terms of trusting, being the least foolish, 1 through 4, where are you going?
Well, I do think the Vikings still deserve least foolish.
Okay.
I'm not a fan of their GM because he hasn't done anything yet, but their owners are the best owners in football. I mean, I think you can make that argument. And then, like you said, we like their coach. The Wild coach, as long as Suter's not the GM like he was there for a while, the Wild coach and GM and owner are pretty good. The Timberwolves get beat up because their owner's goofy.
But Tim Conley's done a really nice job. Really nice job. Yep. I guess in my dissertation on them, it'd be really brief. I don't care who owns them because the GM is doing the right thing.
Well, and if Lowry wasn't house poor, he'd be a great one because he's so out there. And then there's the Twins, and the Twins have been good for so long.
They handcuff themselves. It's what they do.
But they've been good. I mean, they had really bad years in there, but for the last 20 years, they've
got the young core that looks okay. So you're not relying on big signings, which is good because you've already declared you're not going to do that.
Right.
How much luck is involved, though? Because
they didn't sign Shane Bieber.
Well, if the Rudy Gobert thing doesn't work out, Tim Conley is already well under the bus.
Yeah.
Now he's a bit of a savior because it looks great.
Yeah, and how about the hiring of Chris Finch in the face of all the, you can't fire your guy mid-season, you can't do this, you can't do that, and they hired Finch. And
so what you're saying is at some point, everybody plays the fool.
Everybody plays a fool, Brian. Pumpkin's right here.
All right, Pumpkin. We'll be right back. Dave Hoops is next. It's Brian Prudhomme, and it's Dave Cook. He's my Pumpkin every Saturday. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're going to ever get rid of that, huh?
Nope. Ashton Kutcher, Pumpkin. So are we. Stick around. Back here on the Northland Sports page, Brian Prudhomme, Dave Cook. We think Dave Hoops will be along soon. Little on-air production meeting. We kind of hope he's listening. And he is, because we asked if he could please call us because we got his voicemail. So we do have him now. And
live on the air.
Without him, it wouldn't be that great of a show. Without our sponsors, there wouldn't be a show.
100%. Let's start with Arola Architecture Studio, Hoops Brewing, Mike Regan at Christensen Group Insurance, the Blackwoods Group, including their locations on London Road, Blackwater downtown, Tavern on the Hill, up in Proctor and up in Two Harbors, Mount Royal Bottle Shop, Stewart's Bike Sports and Trophies, Comfort Systems of Duluth, Kohler Toyota and Kohler Hyundai, Advantage Emblem and Screen Printing, OAR Holdings, and Kraus Heating and Cooling, your Carrier HVAC authorized dealer.
Incredibly grateful to have all of those great sponsors. Incredibly grateful each and every Saturday Dave Hoops is able to join us. Voicemail be damned. We got him now. He did give us a call, so we'll go right to him. Dave Hoops, happy Saturday. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Sorry about that. No idea how that happened, but thrilled to be here. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Good to have you. We knew it would work out. Just provide you the phone number and boom, you were there.
Sooner or later, yeah.
That's kind of how it works. Every time we need you, poof, you're there. We appreciate that. How are things at the brewery? I will be down probably in about 4 hours. That's part of my agenda today for sure.
They're great. Last night was just wonderful having, a crowd there just to watch the ladies' games. And even, we had the sound on. We had people cheering. It was outstanding, and it will be the same thing tonight.
It will be fun because the men's Final Four gets their turn now. But yes, last night was incredible. I got to know which direction you were going because Caitlin Clark is kind of all the rage for everybody that's just getting introduced to women's basketball at the collegiate level. She's kind of Taylor Swift, except she's a player. Everybody who knows the sport now but is new seems to know it because of her. I, for one, was cheering, not against her, but I was cheering for UConn because of Paige Beckers, and I've always loved Gino Auriemma. Great game, interesting ending. We'll get to that, but where was your allegiance, if any, yesterday?
It was with the eyeballs on the actual events. No, I picked Iowa to win it all, even though they're 7-point downs. They're 7-point underdogs, and Carolina's got to be a huge favorite. But it's just such a tremendous time as far as she's going to go number one. The draft will be watched in a few weeks. It's going to change the WNBA as far as viewership that people that weren't interested before. And of course, I'm rooting for Paige, and UConn is my team, that and the Ducks. So I have them winning the men's. But it was a good game, and you're right. It was a little bit controversial at the end. You are correct.
Yeah, I want your take on that because in the moment, I was furious because I couldn't take off my UConn fandom at first. And then I thought, well, we want players to decide the game, not officials. The more angles I saw, the less angry I got. I'm still confused as to whether or not that's something you focused on all game, as to how it can show up in that moment. I'm not one that thinks the rules should change based on the moment, but I'm loving everybody's individual thoughts on it. I want to get yours.
Well, my first thought was that just like the NHL draft last year, the league wants certain things. Now, obviously, I have no basis for that, but you know what I'm saying.
No, I agree
and
with
then
you.
I quickly shook that off, looked at it a few more times.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to interject and cut you off, but I was just going to say it does look worse when the officials get involved and, lo and behold, the most marketable player benefits. Go ahead.
Well, I agree with you. I looked at it a number of times too, and yeah, technically it was a foul that they could call, but I don't think they should have. I think that probably was let go all the time, and it was a game-changing call. Maybe. I mean, it still would have been quite difficult, but it kind of made the game end that way. So I think that call shouldn't have been made. Was it a terrible, disgusting call? No. It was legally the right call, I guess.
So I know basketball is a different sport when it's officiated, but that's interference in hockey, man. Like, she lowered the boom on that girl. She didn't just take the charge or didn't just set the screen. She leaned in, threw a forearm. I think the call is legit. The only person out there who is probably wincing is Rudy Gobert because he does that 18 times an NBA game.
Right.
That's his big tell. But I'd be really interested in hearing what basketball people think because I thought that was legit call right away.
See, I didn't know about right away because, again, the first angle I saw, I thought that's horrible. And in the moment, I thought this is how this game is going to end. But again, I'm not a fan of let's change the rules because of the moment. I don't like when I'm watching a hockey game in double overtime and they say, well, it's going to have to be egregious now. No, you trip a guy, put the arm up, let's call it. I get it. But there is a such thing as learning of how the game is called.
Yeah.
Somebody will say, boy, they're letting him play, or boy, this is tight. Has that illegal screen been called all night? Because even SportsCenter was kind of going off on, really, that's how this is going to end. And a lot of basketball people, as Dave said, were doing that. But was it called 7-8 times? You probably could have. Why that one?
You always talk about, Brian, how we always say that missing the cold against Seattle was the end of that Vikings game, but it wasn't. The Vikings still had a chance. What did you tell me in the car?
Well, Caitlin Clark, as good as she is, missed a key free throw. UConn missed the ability to box out and get the ball again. So that wasn't the end of the game. But like Gary Anderson's kick in the Dome against Atlanta, this call will be what is talked about. Yep. That didn't necessarily have to end it. But speaking of what's being talked about, Dave Hoops, I got to bring up what I did a week and maybe two, maybe both Saturdays ago. We're going to have Claudia Chikamian on, former Duluth sports anchor at Fox 21, who's now in Alabama, but she's an alum of South Carolina. And you already said they're going to be a marketable favorite, and nobody's talking about them. This is an undefeated team that should win it all, but it's all Caitlin, it's all Paige, it's Gino, what have you. South Carolina under the radar, just kind of laughing at everybody.
Well, there's some truth to that, but if you were watching the telecast last night, Dawn Staley was on constantly. And she was on SportsCenter, and she was actually on more than anybody else. They're getting plenty of coverage. It's just that most people assume they're going to win, and this is such a story. But I don't know that they're being disrespected. If she was Danny Hurley, she would make this into a federal case. She just got more class than that. But I don't think that people that know basketball are forgetting about them at all.
No, I don't think so either. But it's just ironic to me that there were certainly two games last night. And mind you, I know the difference between a 19-point game and one that came down to a controversial call with 4 seconds left. But South Carolina is undefeated and blowing most people out. It took a good hour after the UConn Iowa game last night to even mention, oh, by the way, in the game in front of them, this happened.
Yeah, it's tough, Dave. I agree with you that, the sports people aren't missing this, but I think the people that have jumped on women's basketball in the past year or so, I think that, South Carolina's afterthought and the game is just, okay, the championship game was played. It's like the Olympic hockey team. All right, we beat the Russians.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have that other game.
It's almost like a piece of trivia. Who'd they beat to actually get the goal? Yeah. People would say Russia and be wrong. I agree with you there. One thing I love, Dave Hoops, is you've been on the air with us for about 8 minutes now this particular Saturday, and we've spent all of it talking about women's basketball.
Yes.
Now, Dave and I would do that, and perhaps you would too. We're not new to appreciating the game, but it's blowing up for us, and this is huge for the sport itself.
Well, and I would agree 100%. I'm a pretty vocal women's sports supporter, all of them, yes, and it makes me really happy to see this. And there's a lot going on here. Just back to that call though, Iowa flops a lot, and they let some of those go last night. And Gabby flopped a little bit off the hit, even though she did hit a much bigger woman. So.
Right.
Again, they let a lot of that go last night, so I don't need to revisit it, but I just wanted to make that point.
No, and it's a great time for a lot of good sports to have a brewery that's known for being a sports place to be. You've got Twins baseball going, NHL making a playoff push, if you want to call it that. The Wolves weren't good last night, but they've been fun to watch and hopefully will be well into the summer. And then you've got March Madness trickling into April for its most climactic moments. This is great to have a brewery like yours where it's, essentially a bit of a sports bar. I know you don't love that title, but you certainly can be.
Well, we're a brewery that likes sports. There you go. You don't have to like sports to go to the brewery, but we do on certain times really highlight it. But we're always going to have the games on. And, today, to your point as well, everybody's already anointing UConn and not talking that much about, the two-peat. Now Carolina's looking at a two-peat, and they're kind of making a lesser deal of it, even though everybody wants to see Purdue play UConn and then have a classic that we can talk about for the next year. So NC State is the best story. I don't think they're going to win. What are they, 10-point dogs? But
Right.
that would be a great story too.
It'll be really fun. It's a lot of good basketball to watch. Personally, I'm a basketball guy. I like this for the sport in general, women's, men's, whatever level, because the amount of conversations I've had with just friends of mine who aren't basketball people, a lot of them have said, this is fun, or this is crazy, or this game is nuts. And it's usually followed up with, and I don't even like basketball. Well, these types of things actually kind of happen a lot. It might be time to start liking basketball.
It's the reason.
All right, so that call might be questioned for a while. Dave Cook, you've always got good questions for Dave Hoops.
Well, I do, and one of the things that I think is fun about basketball is contrast in styles. And you know my style of basketball, and I'm a sucker for Alabama.
Right.
I want to see press, run fast, win every time, and they got their hands cut out for it.
You just want to see signs at basketball games that say, we want Bama, like you see at football games.
That's right. All right, so here's a question, Brian. We actually took my question in our intro, and that was going to be the best Minnesota sport owner, right?
Oh, my apologies.
Our conversation here, I didn't tell you ahead of time, so you're fine.
I don't prepare like you do.
So we just got kind of a conversation going, and I'm wondering, in your guys' sports fandom, that foul last night, that controversial foul, is going to be something we talk about, like you said, in 10, 12 years. What's the most controversial call that sticks with you over your sportsdom?
Ooh, fun one. Dave Hoops, go ahead.
Pearson, Vikings.
Same.
He pushed
that's a
off.
good one.
I was going to ask.
Story.
I was going to ask, do you have to be alive for it? Because I don't even remember if I was. I don't remember the year. I don't think I was. Born in 1979. But it's kind of become like a mythical creature. Drew Pearson has been talked about enough in my life where that's it for me too.
You guys are good, because Joe Mauer's double was still fair.
No, I agree.
Yep.
And I'll even say I brought it up in the car right here, and I didn't have a dog in this fight. The Armando Galarraga perfect game that Jim Joyce took away from him. That stuck out. Denkinger's call.
Yeah. Nope, I agree. All right, so I'm going to go off sports for a little bit here now, because I'm taking a road trip. You guys know that. So, gentlemen, road trip. What are the must-haves? What do you got to bring with you when you go on a road trip?
Well, you need a tremendous co-pilot, number one.
Yeah.
Somebody that really understands riding shotgun. Okay, they're in charge of music, and they're in charge of keeping you awake, but they're also in charge of being interesting and fun, and, you have to be able to take their place, number one. Number two, you need a large-mouth Gatorade if you're a guy and you're in a hurry. No, we don't need to go into that. Number three,
Bravo, Dave.
snacks. But you need fruit. You need fruit, not just carbs and chips. And number four, I always bring a lot of books on tape. I like being read to. We don't really need a map anymore because GPS works pretty well, but I still like holding a big road atlas as well. So that's kind of my short list.
So that's beautiful, because there's almost nothing that I can add to that. I agree with everything he said. I just got back from a road trip, albeit only to the cities. It's not a lengthy journey by any stretch, but we made sure that all of those were present. Maybe not the large Gatorade, because there's enough rest stops along the way, if you know what I mean. But I think, Dave, you hit on you need fruit and other things, because it always kind of cracks me up that no matter what age you are, you go on a road trip and you go into a gas station or a convenience store and you automatically come out looking like you're 8 because you've got candies and chips that certainly you've had in your life before, but they're probably not on your grocery list routinely, but they are for that road trip.
That's true. All right, so I have two different directions here. One, I'm going to stay on the road trip thing because it's front and center, right? All right, so guys, we've all been on road trips, and folks who are listening can play along with this one. What's your favorite road trip memory?
There's many, but I'll make it quick. When I was in the middle of going to San Francisco, my best friend and I drove to New York, road trip, where we looked at apartments. He got one. Then we road trip to San Francisco from New York. That was quite a trip where I got an apartment. He still lives there. I do not. But that was the most epic road trip I've ever had. Cool. There was also a running out of gas situation on that one. Yeah, that was a big one. So that's a big, that's the first memory for me.
All right, so I'm going to go back to what I did last week, and that's cheat a little bit by giving multiple answers. I'm going to give you two, because if I don't give you the first one, this is kind of like the engagement ring answer last week. If I don't give you the first one, I probably goofed. My favorite road trip has to be the invention of this show, came on a road trip, did it not?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
So that would be one. Second
That was a
one,
2.5 hour trip that took like 10 minutes.
right. Second one for me would be to Kansas City, Missouri to watch UMD men's basketball in the NAIA National Tournament. Now, for most people, they're probably going, why is that great? Well, I was in 6th grade. We couldn't go to the opening round. We had to make sure they won, and then we would go to the second round. Well, they played the evening that we left. So being in 6th grade, knowing that you're getting out of school, knowing that you're leaving your house at 10:30 at night to take a 10-hour trip with your dad and family friends to watch basketball, I don't know. I could have been more excited to do anything. Now, we didn't get to Kansas City till probably 7 o'clock in the morning. And sorry, Iowa, I probably slept through most of your state, but it was a pretty cool road trip for me.
When I was a kid, we went to Cooperstown, right? And so if mom and my sister were coming along, it had to be, it wasn't the direct route, we'll just say that.
Right.
And so on the way, we went through Canada, and on the way, Dad needed money in Montreal. Well, there was a couple things that were great about my dad. There was one thing that wasn't at that point, and that was he didn't have a lick of French. And I've told you my history in French.
But did he know a guy from French Lick?
No. Well, he did, but
Sorry.
not that way.
I'll do anything to drop Larry Bird in. Go ahead.
So my history in French class was I passed because I perfectly conjugated. I don't speak
Nice.
French. But
What's French for pumpkin? Go ahead.
So we go into this bank, right? And my dad's trying to get people to help him, and he knows merci is thank you, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't know how to say it.
Merci beaucoup.
So,
Thank you very much.
So we're in the bank, and he's going, mercy, 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 mercy.
Who's hurting you?
Right. That's why I had to leave, because it sounded like he needed some forgiveness. So yes, that was the good one for me.
That's pretty good.
All right, do we have time for one more? Because this one's a little silly.
If we go
Or should we-
real fast.
All right, guys, favorite Disney character?
Oof. I don't know if I can go fast on that one. Go ahead.
Mickey.
It's gonna go with the captain of the whole thing. That's not bad. I gotta go Donald Duck because I miss my dad every day. And my dad did the world's greatest Donald Duck impression. And you talk about getting through road trips. There were times where my family always hung out in a group of 16, 4 families of 4, with kids ranging from, I think the age range from youngest to oldest was probably 6 or 7 years. So you're talking about sometimes a 15-year-old going on a trip with an 8-year-old. Funny how we all bonded around a Donald Duck impression. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. And so I have 2 that I want to give you. One for the one obvious one, and Robin Williams' Aladdin is still probably my favorite. But Herbie the Love Bug.
Yeah.
That's the
What was the car number? 53?
53, the Volkswagen Bug, and it could do a lot of things that you didn't think cars could do.
That's pretty good. Speaking of road trips, I already told you, Dave Hoops, I'm taking one to the brewery. What's on the menu today? Are you still on the
we
menu?
have a brand new sour beer. People are always... Yeah. You got me?
Yeah, we just got a pretty big delay, but go ahead.
You guys got me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Anyway, we have a new sour beer, Sour Berry Imperial Stout. You know, real sour took a couple of years to make. That's on tap. And we've got guava wheat, we've got peach and pear, we've got raspberry, and we've got a brand new batch of porter. And we've got wall-to-wall sports and a beautiful day.
There is nothing wrong with any of that. Bumping you out again with beer drinkers and hellraisers because I'm bringing a group of total of 6 of us. You'll know all of us, and we probably qualify as both. We're going to have a good day at Hoops Brewing. Every day is a good day when we get to talk to you, Dave. Let's do it again next Saturday.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Have a great day. Enjoy
You
the
as
game.
well. That's our guy, Dave Hoops. Even when a little delayed, he's always got great things to say. Speaking of which, we're going to buy or sell. Those are always interesting things to say for us as well. Stick around. Northland Sports Page continues. We'll be right back. Always looking for a good buy here on the Northland Sports Page. Brian Prudhomme and Dave Cook. It is time to play buy or sell. The game works like this. I'm going to give a statement for each of the 4 major sports leagues. And if Dave agrees, he's going to say buy, and he's going to tell me why. If he disagrees, he's going to say sell, and he's going to tell me why. His responsibilities are as follows. Determine the order in which we play, league by league, and also give his piping hot takes. Mr. Dave Cook, where would you like to start today?
Well, let's start with the National Hockey League.
All right, so the NHL regular season is winding down. Pretty soon we will have individual awards, recipients, what have you. We've talked a lot about Brock Faber and should he or shouldn't he win the Calder Trophy, and we did that last week. I want to piggyback this thought on it today. So in the National Hockey League, there is an MVP trophy. There is also a best defenseman trophy. You got the Hart, you got the Norris, I believe. So buy or sell that there should be a best rookie and also a best rookie defenseman award.
Oh, I'm going to sell. All of a sudden, you've got 66 awards. And by the way, the NHL could like change names into what the award is, because sometimes you say, oh, they're going to win the Norris Award. And
Right.
It's like, huh? Which one is that?
What
Takes
did
me a
Chuck do?
Right, exactly. So, no, the more awards, the less valuable, right? And so let's not water them down with an award for everything.
So I'm going to agree with you in everything that you said, and then I'm going to take the opposite stance because that makes for better radio, and that's what I did last week. So I'm going to buy that there should be, and I'm going to tell you flat out that if not for Brock Faber's existence and, pertinence towards this award, I probably wouldn't at all. I wouldn't have given it thought. But it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that, let's say he doesn't win this and Bedard does, which I think we believe is going to happen just because of the way that people view the shiny toy in hockey, as you said.
Yep.
What seems really silly to me is, well, wait until next year, where this year you won't be recognized at all, but next year, because they siphon off defensemen into their own award, you got a shot at one. Yeah. That seems really dumb to me. So if we're going to separate them the later in the career that they get, separate them off the top too. The NFL does it. You get an offensive rookie of the year, you get a defensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's go ahead and do it.
That's
I
true.
understand the watered down, but it's a copycat idea. Other leagues do it. Follow.
You have to go one more deep and say, okay, let's do a rookie goaltender of the year because they don't play as many games.
Well, there you go. Do you have to do rookie position by position? Then you're really
here we
watered
go.
down. Then you're flooded.
Yep, here we go. All right, so let's go with baseball.
All right, so Major League Baseball. The Twins are 3-3. Very small sample size. But the offense is, at the very least, frustrating. So buy or sell that you're worried about this Twins lineup.
I'm worried about this Twins lineup. The thing is when Royce gets there, it seems like the team is better. And so as long as he's out and they're striking out 15 times a game, they're in a lot of trouble. And we've talked about this for a couple of years. 3 outcome baseball makes sense until it doesn't. And right now if it's even, so three outcome baseball, home run, walk, strikeout.
Right.
If it's fairly even, works. But the minute it's little home run, little walk, and gigantic strikeouts, it's no longer effective.
Well, and that's exactly how they lost on Thursday. They got the home run. They got the extra base hits, but they were too far apart. And Cleveland kind of punch and Judied, as they say, their way to a bunch of singles, but strung them together, put up a 3 spot, and for some reason, the Twins being down 3 right now feels like being down 30. I'm going to buy that I'm worried as well, and I hate to have to do it because in so many text message conversations and truthfully sports conversations that I have face-to-face with people, it's weird to me that I'm the one talking people off the ledge a lot. I know that I'm fairly pessimistic, and if my wife is listening at all, she's going, fairly? Are you joking? But for some reason, I have friendships with a lot of people that panic a lot harder than I do. And I'm usually the guy that goes, it's 6 games out of 162. What in the world are you worried about? But I am worried a little bit because this team survived with the 3 outcome baseball like you were talking about. One of those outcomes isn't even there anymore. They are, I believe, dead last in home runs right now. Only 6 games, I get it. But on the active roster, which obviously doesn't include Royce Lewis, you've got 2 home runs. Yep. You got one by Jeffers, you got one by Julian. Now, Correa's hitting well. Buxton outside of Thursday was hitting well. Kirilloff's hitting well. You bunch them together, you've got something without question. But I am worried about their ability at least to put the ball in play. They set a record last year. And too many people, I was talking to you about this yesterday morning, too many people thought Joey Gallo is not on this team anymore, and that's going to solve it. What did it solve? Matt Wallner might be Joey Gallo. Max Kepler would strike out in T-ball right now.
Yeah, no, I got that.
So I am a little bit worried because, yes, there's the old adage of the pitching is usually ahead of the hitting early, and I get that. But that also pertains to the Twins in the sense that, do we know that Louis Varland can be better than what we saw? Bailey Ober better be better than what we saw because we saw a nightmare. Chris Paddock was okay. The pitching has kept them in it like it did last year. On paper, they don't have the pitching they did last year. If this lineup doesn't figure it out and the pitching comes back to earth, they could be in real trouble. Plus, it is a small sample size, but I think you already have to look at Detroit's only lost once.
Yeah. And remember before the season, I said that's a team to be afraid of was Detroit. The Coach Baggs used to talk about productive outs. Like if you're going to make an out, make something of it, right? And they're just not. Like if you've got, again, 3 outcome baseball, but you got a guy at second and you've got one out, you got a chance to drive him in without a home run. But if you're going to strike out both times and say, well, 3 out come baseball.
Right.
Yeah, well, 3 out come baseball left the guy at second.
Absolutely. So we've got 2 down, 2 to go, and we've only got 5 minutes to get through
All right,
2
let's
because
go
we got
to
a guest-filled hour number 2.
National Basketball Association.
All right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit again. The NBA is part of this topic, but I'm going to bring it down to the NCAA level with the men's Final Four today.
Okay.
With the Final Four teams, the big man plays a big role in at least 3 of them. Our Minnesota Timberwolves basically told us we're going to play multiple bigs on the floor and it's going to work. For the last several years, big men have played different in professional basketball. With what you're seeing at the college level, is the NBA about to return buy or sell to the conventional big man?
Nah, they won't. Here's the thing, and it goes back to what we've talked about forever with, these super college teams and how they would do in the NBA or in the NFL, frankly. Alabama, remember about 5 years ago? Alabama could go into the NFL and finish third in the whatever.
And no, they couldn't.
No, they couldn't.
Right.
And that's what we're looking at here. You've got
now that the Bears got rid of Fields, they couldn't. Go ahead.
You got 3 really good and different centers, right? And I thought I would answer the other way because the 7-footers are so much different than they are in the NBA. But these 2 guys are centers.
Right.
And the player of the year from Purdue, he's like Sabonis' dad center, right? Yeah. So the big powerhouse, and you're just going to pull him outside. Like I don't think he's a heck of a college player. Let's just say that. The kid from UConn's a little different, but he's still a center. So you're going to have to wrap somebody around him.
That's what I mean. When these kids go to the next level, is the NBA going to have to follow because that's the class coming in?
I don't think so because you got the kid from North Carolina who plays like Nurkic.
I don't think so either because the 3-point shot is still going to be way too important. All you got to do is watch warm-ups of basketball at any level. I don't care what size they are. They're all shooting from 25 feet.
The 6'11" kid from North Carolina, his ability to see the court, like his IQ he's an NBA player. Like
who's in big trouble if they go back to the conventional big man? Where's Karl Anthony Towns going to play?
Yeah, right. Let's hope
too slow to defend.
Let's hope
you can't dribble. You can shoot, but where are you going?
Yeah, to the New York Knicks, but that's not what you meant.
Well, it depends on if he can be a good teammate or not, which segues perfectly into the last one, the NFL.
Yes.
So Stephon Diggs is on a different team again.
Yes, he is.
And boy, Houston really fleeced the Bills here because look at the draft picks exchanged and, how big of a whiny teammate is Stephon Diggs. Well, what I didn't know is part of the deal was voiding out the contract where they only get Diggs for a season guaranteed. So buy or sell if you're the Houston Texans, you're happy to have Stephon Diggs on your team.
Buy, because it's for 1 year. You can always take a risk on a 1-year contract, always, because he's not going to blow anything apart in 1 year. Diggs is going to want to prove he's worth the free agency. Like that's what you want. You want Diggs to be frustrated with where he's at and prove everybody wrong. The problem with this for Houston, and I know this sounds silly, Diggs is going to be targeted 200 times. Like he'll have 100 catches. The other 2 kids, the young wide receivers who really were part of the look at how far we're going with Houston, they're not going to see the ball next year.
Well, and I'm going to go off that and say I'm going to sell because if those kids do and Stephon Diggs doesn't, you're going to see what we think we already know about Stephon Diggs as a locker room presence. And what I worry about is Houston was definitely the feel-good story last season, no doubt about it. And the quarterback literally of that feel-good story was C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud, everybody talks about, sophomore jinx, sophomore slump in any sport. It might happen.
Yeah.
He might decrease in talent a little bit or in numbers at least.
Maybe he has a tell that people are figuring out.
So the minute he does and Stephon Diggs goes off, it's going to get ugly. Or let's say he doesn't, but again, Diggs isn't the target. Diggs could be a gnat in the ear of C.J. Stroud.
Like he was with Kirk.
It just seems weird to me that you bring in one of the supposed worst teammates in the league into a situation where everybody's a feel-good story and we're good now and we're going to be great next. It just doesn't fit to me. It feels a little bit like Josh Donaldson.
I was just thinking you just described Donaldson.
It feels like, man, what a great statistical player and a position of need, and we could really jump off paper now. Unless he doesn't fit, then it could all blow up.
Yeah,
we could have a cake in the clubhouse when the guy leaves.
Well, that still might happen, but I think for a 1-year contract, that's the guy you want. Like, I think Diggs is going to try to prove the world wrong, and you're going to get the best Stephon Diggs.
I think that was one of our best buy or sells.
Could be.
I didn't tear a rotator cuff, but yes, that was me patting myself on the back. It is a guest-filled hour number 2. Lots of basketball talk with some good sources as well. Football mixed in between. Claudia Chikamian, formerly of Fox 21 in Duluth, She's an alum of the University of South Carolina. She starts hour number 2. In the middle, we do the safety dance with Vincie Glenn, and then we close out the show with Rick Rickert, former Greyhound and Gopher, talking men's Final Four. It's the Northland Sports Page. 1 hour done, 1 to go. Stick around. We will be right back.